2, 3, go.
Go.
Okay, that's fine. Corey, set it off.
How is everyone doing?
Doing well.
No answer.
Chad had coffee.
Chad had coffee. So we are here doing a live conversation. I'm with the 4 dudes from La Dispute. Adam, Chad, Brad, Jordan. My name's Corey.
What about the 5th dude?
Yeah.
The 5th dude who's talking.
The
5th man.
For anyone who doesn't know me, I play guitar in the band as of 2014. And we're going to have a conversation specifically today about their first LP, Somewhere at the Bottom of the River, between Vega and Altair, which I think is the first time I've ever said the whole name of that record. And
Yeah, you don't need to.
I forgot that's what it was.
Has anyone in our band said it?
Definitely in interviews.
Not in many years.
Yeah, maybe. We just say somewhere, though.
the Somewhere record. We're going to talk about that, times around that, influences. We're just going to have sort of a free-flowing conversation about it. Should be fun. I think I have an interesting perspective because back then I was a fan of the band, also playing in bands, and then we met towards the end of that touring cycle, where you guys were just about to go make Wildlife. So yeah, I'll be coming from sort of a fan, but also someone who knows you guys very well and has played a lot of these songs in the live setting. So where was the band at the moment when you decided, okay, we're gonna make this record?
So we had done Vancouver. That was the only thing that we'd ever only other record we'd ever done. And then we started to write again and originally conceived of a 5-song EP that's Genesis was writing Said the King to the River.
Okay, so that was that was the creative start of everything. Was that one song?
Yeah. So we wrote Said the King. That was the first track we'd written since we finished Vancouver. We had the idea to release a 5-song EP that would include that and 2 other songs that we had written that eventually became a 7-inch that immediately proceeded Somewhere. So we put those 2 tracks on that untitled 7-inch, kept Said the King, and I think 2 other songs. I think Bury Your Flame.
Such
We
Small
kept
Hands.
Barrier Flame and Such Small Hands, I think, were both
Okay.
Yeah,
done at the time, maybe?
I was going to say
I think you're right.
those were the 5 tracks.
Okay, so when did this the idea of doing a 5-song EP turn into a full LP, and one that's pretty expansive as far as first LPs go?
Yeah, honestly,
Man, George, you seem to be remembering this
I don't
better.
know how.
I don't remember.
All day long, I was thinking I remember nothing of writing and recording this record, but suddenly it's coming back to me now that we're having
Yeah,
a
that's
conversation
great.
about it. I don't know exactly because we were in to the process to the point where we had album artwork. We had picked out, I think, that painting that Curtis did. Curtis, who did the artwork for Vancouver and who plays in the band Paucity. And
Oh,
it
yeah.
that paint. This
I
is
remember
this
this.
is little piece of Grand Rapids trivia that original artwork still hangs in the Meanwhile bar, and it used to have a little placard next to it that said "La Dispute" by Curtis Little. Anyway, so we
I didn't even know that.
we were
That's
deep
cool.
enough into the process conceptually with an EP that we had album artwork, and I can't remember what exactly was the impulse to stop and then expand the idea, but it happened.
Yeah, I mean, and it's also the addition of maybe 40 more minutes of music.
Yeah, yeah. Honestly, I think that I think that maybe we felt the 2 songs that ended up going on to the untitled 7-inch stuck
Yeah, that's what it
stuck
was,
out
actually.
stylistically, so we decided that we'd rather put those out as their own standalone entity and then use the 3 remaining tracks as building blocks from which to start building a proper LP.
Fast. Do you remember how we put out that 7-inch? You want to talk about that quick?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I remember not recording those tracks, but I recorded the other tracks. I don't know if the sessions were separate. It was like
They were.
I don't
the
remember.
there
or
were
I
a
guess
lot
I
of
wasn't.
sessions. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I wasn't there even when the first two were being recorded, which makes sense because I wasn't in the band.
Yeah.
I want to say I was in the band when that 7-inch came out, when it actually like came to fruition, right?
You were,
Yeah.
and you played on that too.
No.
On the 7-inch? No, I definitely didn't.
Did you not play on
But
that?
you know, on the back of it where it says who like the lyrics and like credits and everything, it's band members' first names only. So it just says Adam.
Oh, and that's confused Brad for years.
Wow, that's crazy. But you did do the artwork and you put it out on your little label.
Yeah, I had a little bit of money when I graduated, or I guess this is when I was in college, and I did that Untitled, which I didn't. It wasn't like a real label. There was no distribution or anything. I did the minimum order, which is 500 copies, and spent all my money on it, and then it was over. And I did that first native demo as a 12-inch too, and those were between those two things that was all of my money. So I never like wanted to do it any further. But it was kind of a weird like forcing myself into the picture, which I'd done historically in bands before I met you guys.
You strong-armed us financially.
It worked.
That's amazing.
No, it wasn't a money thing. It was like, hey, check it out. You guys want this
No.
record to exist?
I stand by saying you strong-armed us financially. I want that to forever be etched into Law Dispute lore. You use your post-college savings to strong-arm us into allowing you to replace another Adam.
But back to
Yeah.
Somewhere, you did. I know you weren't around for when we wrote those 3 tracks, but we did have you go back and re-record them. I remember that.
Yeah, I
for
definitely
sure.
played every bass track on Somewhere.
So Somewhere is all Adam Vass, folks.
You're hearing it now, folks.
Just to be clear.
Every instrument.
His money helped him buy onto those tracks.
Yeah.
Well, getting back to the record itself, what at the time at that time in the band, what was your goal with making a new record? Were you just looking to keep putting out new music? Were you gaining momentum in terms of a fan base? Were you like, we're going for it, we're gonna try and be a really big band? Or were you just like, we all want to make like a statement, like a large piece of art, and kind of do that to the best of our ability, and then just see what happens?
I think a big part of it, and this kind of clears up the ambiguity of our band's actual foray into the industry and into being an actual functioning band, was that Adam joined. I think that right around the time we were first writing those songs, we were transitioning from our former bass player who was pursuing other endeavors into having Adam in Grand Rapids full time and being in the band. That was kind of like the last piece we needed in order to make a legitimate push at, obviously not like surviving in the landscape, but just like going on tour and playing more shows. So I think a big part of it was that Adam had joined and that we'd all kind of committed to giving it a punk rock shot, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, and speaking more to gaining momentum and stuff, I think that was a little more of the push behind it, because at that time we were pretty much playing shows at least every other weekend, sometimes every weekend. But we were starting to see, like, having a good response and positive feedback from people. So not that was the motivation, but I think that gives you some confidence to keep pursuing
Certainly,
it.
yeah.
And that's why when we were playing a lot of shows with Adam's, not first band, but the band before LD, I remember talking to him outside a show, and old Adam had left, and I was just asked him if he was serious about like if he'd want to do this more as a full-time thing, and he was super into it. So it was definitely in the back of our minds, I think. Maybe not super intentional, but we were all thinking about
Gotcha.
that.
That was the time too, I think, when every band, we were all teenagers or like, college aged people.
Yeah.
And you have to decide then if that's the thing you're going to do or not. And if you're not, then, you know, there's no point in kind of continuing to like goof off and do it.
Yeah.
So every band I knew or was in at that time either had the guys that wanted to, it was like a thing they did on the weekend and then go to school or like career prep, or people who were like, yeah, I'll do this for like the next 10 years, I guess.
Yeah.
Was
But
that
even
No, exactly.
even at the time that we were doing this, I feel like we still were those like weekend warrior people. You know,
Yeah, you and I were still
also,
in school.
and not all of us, but we were either working or in school. And I don't think it was really until after the record came out that we sort of made that decision to hit it like
Yeah. Yeah, I'd agree with that. Yep.
We did our like what I would say the Loudest Beat first tour, which was like a week or two over Christmas break. During my 1 year I did it at Grand Valley, and that was enough for me to be like, yeah, I don't want to go back to school, or getting a little taste of tour. And I don't think Somewhere was out yet, but we had been recording it.
yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's right.
Because I was looking through some old stuff and I found that we bought the van in July of 2007. That was,
Well,
Yeah, I moved here in 2007, probably July or like August, because that was the semester I
Yeah, so
started
that
school.
makes sense.
And okay, so there was a agreed upon motivation. Speaking more to the record itself, what do you feel like you're trying to convey as a band when you were writing it? Did you feel like you were onto something? Because however you feel about the record individually, I think it does come off as sort of a grand project. Agreed? Maybe not.
definitely.
Yeah, it's lofty.
Yeah.
But I don't think in the moment I considered that.
So it wasn't really consideration. It was kind of just what was coming out of you guys.
I don't think there was a point where we were like, let's do a record. It's going to be an hour long and we're going to do all this shit in that hour. But it was never like, it never seemed deliberate, or I don't know. Things just happened to be really grand over time.
Yeah, I don't think there were any sort of external expectations when we conceived the record. I think it just was already how we operated. It was already what we as a group
That's
and as
true.
individuals angled towards in the art that we enjoyed and the music that we were making. I think that we just kind of by nature had lofty intentions. So like all the numerology and the Easter eggs and all the like interconnectivity between songs lyrically, that kind of all just flowed out organically. It was already how we operated. It wasn't like with Wildlife, like it was very deliberate, it was very plotted out.
Mhm.
With Somewhere, it was in certain ways a bit haphazard. Like we weren't thinking as far ahead as we would eventually in our writing, but we were already kind of those dorks.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like a puzzle sort of, because we didn't know what it was going to be like in the end, but we'd just riff off of ideas. Like all the number stuff that came later, and then we started adjusting other songs or pieces of songs to fit that accordingly.
Right,
So
right.
that's a lot of editing and a lot of going back, because some of those songs were written very far apart, and then towards the end some songs were written very quickly.
Yeah, I seem to
Yeah.
remember. I mean, we had those 3 tracks. We had Such Small Hands, and we had Set the King to the River, from whence the title derived, which the title I had very, very early on, before I think we'd really written anything, which has become a constant theme, picking a title and working that way. But We had those 3 tracks, Bury Your Flame being the other, and then fairly shortly after that, we wrote the 3 divorce songs. And I think we knew that those would be linked thematically. So pieces kind of fell into place that way, where we had like what we conceived of as the beginning of the record, and then we partnered it with another track, and then we had those divorce songs and we split those up, and things just kind of it was kind of dominoes that way.
And if I remember correctly too, maybe I'll try to find some of these old little maps we made. But towards the end, we were really getting meticulous with it and putting. I think like every other song has a certain time signature. Like there's
Yeah.
a bunch of weird stuff that
All
I
the
don't even
sevens.
recall properly anymore. But
Unfortunately, a lot of it was on the dry erase board, and it's just going to be lost to history.
Which is one of the most permanent ways to store information. I need to keep this forever. Let's put it on a dry erase board. So the title itself, it's from an Asian folktale
Correct.
about a river separating a prince and princess.
Yeah, essentially. So
So did you know back then that prince would be me?
you have fulfilled the prophecy. It's all come full circle.
Okay, end of podcast. Thank you.
That's it. Everything explained. Corey Straffolina.
All the numbers are just snapping into place. What were quickly what were each of your like main musical influences at the time?
I mean, I know mine real easy. All right, I'll go because I thought everyone would kind of like jump at the bit.
Do it.
Q Not You was my number one at that time. These Arms Are Snakes and that kind of like heavy music that wasn't metal or hardcore. It was just kind of like real strange. I was into it in that era, and I kind of saw Law Dispute as one of those, even though in my opinion now and in hindsight, I don't think that was ever really true. But just like I don't know what style of music that is. Just like ambiguously heavy, maybe indie rock. But
Yeah. That's cool. And you had the interesting perspective too of kind of joining it. So you had a
yeah, the band was established already, and it was already a thing in a way because Vancouver existed, and it was effectively metalcore. And then those like transitional songs happened, and they're like crazy proggy, which was maybe also my first introduction to any kind of like super technical music. I was also coming from, and like this was in the peak of my interest in Midwest Screamo too, and I don't think I got a lot. Everything was kind of in 6/8 or 4/4, and it was real fast and real sloppy. And Law Dispute was maybe like the first really clean and tight band that I knew of, but still heavy.
Yeah, I mean those threads are definitely there. And like I said, you kind of were coming into what you thought the identity of the band was at the time, and really not being able to see where it would go eventually.
Right.
But obviously fitting in. I don't think
I think
I don't say
well,
that like you were coming in as an outsider not getting it, but
No, I had a different perspective because I wasn't there from the start building it.
Yeah, I think Adam's right. Like, at least for me, a lot of the progginess of our band was probably my doing.
Oh,
a little
easy.
bit, but I
Absolutely.
don't even know if this is the right time. But that first Mars Volta record, I think we can all agree we dug.
Oh,
a
yeah.
lot. And I was listening to Fragile by Yes front to back
Yeah.
probably every single day back
Nice.
then. So yeah, I don't know. I was probably jamming a lot what Jordan was because we worked together and he would play a lot of cool stuff at work. So I can't even remember,
I
honestly.
mean, I was like shoulder deep in East by Joanna Newsom, and I think that
Oh, yeah.
that definitely
That's true, yeah.
shows with the lyrical content of the record, like the sprawling folktale derived
Yeah.
album wide narrative.
that's cool though, because
A lot of the antiquated language, Yeah, so that was probably, I mean, not probably, without question, the biggest influence for me lyrically. Obviously not musically. I mean, kind of.
It makes a ton of sense though, and I think it helped craft the original identity of the band and what a lot of people cling to, which is really cool to hear that that's sort of the beginning of that.
Yeah, I think that it's funny. People always have, and then this extends beyond the obvious like public critique, the critical world. There's always this tendency to like trace back origins and find antecedents and be like, oh, this is Fugazi derived, or this is At the Drive-In derived, or like so many kids back when we first started playing being like, oh, this is just like clean screamo worship, this is like Lafayette or whatever, while in reality Brad was listening to Yes nonstop, I was listening to Joanna Newsom, and Vass was listening to Q and Not You. I don't know what Chad was listening
Chad, what
to.
were
He
you
hasn't
listening
spoken
to,
up.
man?
Yeah.
But like it was like a weird amalgamation of different influences pushing all of us to I guess whatever ended up coming out.
Yeah, I
Come
I
on,
had
Chad,
to-
let's hear it.
Coffee
Is the
chat.
coffee wearing off?
I have to take another sip. I
A single sip that will do
That'll
it.
really fire me up for this question.
I had to go back to like on my old hard drive and look through like files because my only way of recording things back then was on like a little like Canon point and shoot camera. So like
Oh,
all
that's
the
right.
demos that I did for the Somewhere record was recorded like in just that little like video format. I pulled that up and there's literally hundreds of them. I realized in like 2007 I was listening to like an embarrassing amount of like tapping music.
Oh yeah.
That was
So-
that time.
oh, definitely.
Stuff in
No.
that era.
and even back I'd film shows. So there's an old show at the DAC, which was Paucity and Maps and Atlases, and that time I feel like for me was like hugely influential, because it was sort of my first like involvement in this sort of music thing. So like seeing those bands doing that kind of thing, that was that you could tell had a huge effect on me. It's like what I could see, what I was looking at, and what I was creating.
Sure. Yeah, that first Maps and Atlases EP and like Russian Circles and Maps and Atlases coming up and playing the DAC, or
Yeah.
Bear vs. Shark. I feel like there's definitely Bear vs. Shark on that record.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That actually,
And that's stuff we were all into
Yeah,
as
for
well.
sure.
yeah, I feel like that is actually a pretty clear picture almost of the stylistic influences for a lot of the record, and then you bring in maybe some of this heavier stuff that Kevin was listening to at the time. Did you guys all still there? It sounded like someone got in their car and just drove
Yeah.
away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just outside my house.
I heard that too. I was
And
like,
then I guess Jordan probably would have got it too. So
hate-
I
I
did
hate
definitely
Bear
sounded
versus
like
Shark.
somebody
Just
drove away.
drives
Like
away.
somebody was like, "Fuck this, I'm out of here." God, they've been at the bus stop the whole time.
So I wanted to start breaking down the record a little bit via its songs with you guys, and I think we can't do that without, of course, starting with Such Small Hands, which has
Let's do it.
it has a little bit of I don't know, it has infamy attached to it for sure. Why do you guys hate playing this song?
I don't think it's a real song. I think most everyone would agree.
Yeah, it's an introduction. I don't know.
What is a song
It's
though? You know,
okay.
Like, what?
Yeah, what is a song?
I was just gonna say
Right.
that. What
I-
is a song? I don't even know it's that we hate playing it. It might be
I think
I was
deeper than
made
that,
to hate
maybe.
playing it.
I think that it's a poor representation of our band, especially however many years past the release of the record we're talking about. I think that's probably the root of our reluctance to play it, is that it's become such a YouTube clip that people grasp to, and I think that
True.
it's misleading at best. It doesn't really give an accurate display of what we are as a band, what we were then, but especially what we are now. And I think that it's become like an unwelcome mile marker or assessment of, I don't know. Am I getting at anything that makes sense to anyone else?
Definitely. It's the first song that shows up on Spotify.
Yeah, it's like I get why. I get why it speaks to people. It's a series of catchphrases. It's catchy. It in some ways bores into your head. And I don't fault people for enjoying it. It just seems like in this day and age, especially with the way that we consume music, what gets put at the top of the list at the outset becomes the most readily accessible thing for everyone seeking a potential introduction to the band. So you either have people who listen to that track and hear me annoyingly say darling like 42 times and are put off, or you have people who hear that and attach to its catchphrasy, succinct, dramatic nature, and then let that become their like benchmark, I guess.
I would say
I think there's also a little bit more to it too. Like if you're separating yourself just from the song aspect of it, it's if someone is looking up our band for the first time, especially now, and they listen to that song and don't like that song, I think it's off-putting because well, like we've said before, it doesn't properly represent our band, especially now. So that person may have got a false impression of who we are. And I think that's another reason it's difficult, because it is the number, like Corey said, number one on
Yeah.
Spotify. Is that
I
right?
believe so.
But anyway, it makes it difficult to break that barrier, because we'd hopefully like to be represented for what we are and not.
No,
I don't know.
that's
Does
exactly
that
what I'm
make any
saying.
Yeah.
sense?
That's exactly what I meant. I think it's the flip side of the coin. One person hears that and attaches to it, and the other person he hears it and allows it to encapsulate their opinion of our band, and that's what's frustrating.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's not terribly indicative even of that record. It was just a way to segue into the proper content and a way to bookend the album. So I think that its mythos has grown beyond its intended, rambling.
Although I think when we first decided to stop playing the song live, I think it was actually for more logistical purposes, because there were several times where we actually like had to stop playing because it just got so out of hand. And I think
That's true.
think that's
Ah,
actually
That's
why we
definitely true.
stopped.
Because I remember the last time, or I guess it wasn't, one of the last times in Australia where we like started playing it and everyone pushed forward, because it was also the intro to the set. So it's like, yo, this band's playing right now. And all the gear comes crashing down and like people are flying into the drums and shit. And you physically couldn't play it anymore.
Yeah.
That's true.
Exhibit B was that Bloodfest when at the end of the Alexis on Fire and Trash Talk tour we did, when Garrett came on stage and
Yes.
and did
Oh, yeah.
his triumphant lead vocal debut, rapping that song with me. And there was that wonky stage that had like, it was like
The step up.
it was tiered at the beginning because they needed to like build over an existing stage, and everyone, as soon as we started playing and Garrett came out, just pushed so hard to the front, and there was just this mass collapse on the front of the stage.
But yo,
But Garrett
that was
from
so
Trash
cool.
Talk rapped Such Small Hands. That's a
Yeah,
good
there's
Such Small
some
Hands.
trivia.
Yeah, trivia piece. Like the first.
Should we do one more bit of trivia
Yeah.
piece
All
on
the
that
trivia.
song?
I have two other
Well,
funny stories if we
I
want
was
to tell
gonna
them.
say. Well, I just wanted to tell the story just so it's out there
Yeah,
how that
yeah.
song was written because
Do you want to tell it or do you want me to?
it's not as cool as. No, go ahead.
Kevin was late for practice, and we used to practice in Brad and I's parents' store's warehouse, and there was like a loft area in the warehouse where all our gear was, and we were waiting for Kevin, who was perpetually late, to show up to practice from work, and our old bass player, also named Adam, was playing his guitar, and we just kind of started improvising over that guitar line, and the lyric that set the rest of the song in motion was, "I thought I heard a door open. Oh no, I thought I heard a door open, but I only heard it close," which was me improvising about having actually thought that I heard the door open, thinking that Kevin was showing up to practice finally, but it was someone else coming in and out of the warehouse. So the way that song was
There you go,
written
people.
was our improv jam session, killing time, waiting for Kevin Whittemore to finally show up to practice after work.
Probably with some Subway.
I was gonna ask, yo,
Earth-shattering.
do you think he got Arby's or Subway?
Definitely Subway.
And-
That
yeah.
Snickers?
yeah.
Did you know that Chris Carrabba from Dashboard Confessional likes this song?
Oh yeah, dude. Honestly, that was one of the. I didn't even write or this song or have anything to do with it really, but I read that and was like so pumped.
That's sick.
It's pretty sick.
I thought his interpretation of it was pretty adept too, where he wasn't like he said it sounded, or our band, I don't know if he continued to listen or anything, was like cursive or a small brown bike or something, and I was like, cool, that's a nice and like pretty well educated response to this.
Yeah, I think
Of
he
course, someone who
mentioned-
is like emo legend would have that context.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think he mentioned how he just likes how it builds tension, which it does. I think the song serves as a good intro to that record, especially with the bookends, but maybe not a great intro to the band.
Sure. Yeah.
Well put.
So if you could ever perform the song as a duet, and it's between Michael Bublé, Eminem, or Chris Carrabba, and it can't be
Damn.
Eminem, it actually can't be Eminem, who would it be?
Eminem was my number one, so now I have to rethink this.
Oh,
I know. When I wrote the question, I knew everyone would say Eminem, so it has to be Michael Bublé or Chris from Dashboard Confessional.
Bublé for sure. That was my first. You didn't even
Yeah,
need to
same,
say
dude.
options 2 or 3. I just heard that voice like
I didn't even
like
need to ask a
melted
question.
honey.
I could have just said Bublé. Does anyone want to tell the hotelier story?
Too long.
We
for
could
chat.
move on.
I think we can move on.
Okay.
All right.
I think that if I would have just chilled out a little bit in tracking that song, it would be cooler. That's my addendum.
Oh, I think the same could be said.
If you had what?
Sorry, go ahead.
Most of the record. If I just
Of everything.
if I just chilled out a little bit.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean you
Okay.
specifically, but I just meant. I mean, you did mean you specifically.
I meant
so
me.
I guess I'm not apologizing, but like if we had the opportunity now to make anything that we used to have made, we would do it better because we're better now.
Yeah,
That's simple.
we were excitable.
Different.
Yeah.
We were excited.
Everything was dramatic and terrifically important, and that mindset shows. But anyway, moving on.
Yeah, as it should
Definitely.
be, I think, when you're younger.
Yeah,
To a degree. There's got to be room for maturity and growth. Said the King, the next song, which is maybe the song you've played the most of any song ever, correct?
Definitely.
I think so. It's got to
A
be.
few thousand times.
They were playing it
Um,
before I joined
yeah.
the band, and then I played it at every show. Since I joined the band for at least 2 years. So
yeah, I played that
we
one a
still
lot.
play it.
We still do.
Yeah, we still play that one. Arguably a fan favorite as far as songs we still play.
Yeah,
I think on the record it does stand out as kind of like a singular entity, as well as it being such a popular song. Any thoughts on maybe why that is, and do you guys enjoy that song?
I think it's one of
I
the better
agree.
songs on that record. And I think you're right that it stands out a little bit, and that would be because
Vague
it
ethnic
was written.
rhythms.
What?
I would say there are vague ethnic
I'm-
rhythms on a lot of our songs.
Yeah.
No, but I was just gonna say it was written
Out of context.
quite a bit
Yeah.
earlier than the rest of those songs, so I think it does stand out a tiny bit, but not enough that it needed to be separate. Maybe.
Yeah. I don't know. I think there's something about
I don't know.
that song that I don't know. It's just like right place, right time, I guess. It was I think it still stands up all these years later. It's like there's a lot of weird things about it, like vague ethnic rhythms or like a sort of Western reminiscence that's kind
sure.
of uncharacteristic to not just our music, but our little aggressive niche in particular. And it's got like these cool little breaks and sing-along parts that people still really attach to, and I still have fun playing it. It's a fun song. I don't know. There's something about that song that
It is a fun song.
it's like a weird, it's as close to a pop song as we could have gotten at that point in time.
Yeah. And I think it was a precursor a little bit to what was to come, by which I mean it's still very frantic, which a lot of those Somewhere songs are, but it also has a bit of a groove to it, and that would come to fruition more in Wildlife and in Rooms. And that was something we hadn't explored up until then. So
Cool. Yeah, I like playing that song. There's still a lot of energy behind it, the give and take from the band and the crowd, so it's exciting. I think those parts that were uncharacteristic that we talked about in terms of both you guys as a band, what you were writing, and maybe the scene was going on. It's rare that you can have things that stand out that much characteristically and then also stand the test of time, because you can make something that stands out like a sore thumb and then it just erodes in people's memory. But
Mhm.
I feel like the song has
Yeah.
stood up. So
And that line going to the vaguely Western feel of that song, the "Tonight We Ride" part of that song is from an old Tom Russell country song.
Nice.
More
So you stole it?
more trivia. Yeah. Oh, dude, I stole everything. Actually, every lyric of that song is from an old country song based on an Asian folktale.
Moving to the next song, which is another one we still play fairly regularly, New Storms. One thing I wanted to ask Jordan about this one has a lot of and a lot of the songs on this record have sort of odd timing signatures. Do you count these out in your head, or do you kind of just listen over and over again and then you really like pin down the placement of your vocals just from memory?
The latter for sure, especially at that point in time. I think
he also texts
I text Brad and be like,
and asks what's
yeah,
happening.
yo, check this out, Brad. Where's the one at this crazy ass part? And also, why did you guys do this to me? I think that if I have trouble with something, my bandmates are always, Brad is always very helpful in explaining them to me. Other times, I think that if I don't try to flesh it out, I can sort of feel it innately and pick what patterns work and string them together. Especially at that point in time.
Yeah, all jokes aside, usually before you have to consult anyone, if ever, you've already got a really good idea. You kind of just riff
Yeah.
off what feels right, because you are really good with rhythms and cadences on your own, and sometimes the best stuff comes when you're setting your own pace or doing your own rhythm despite what the band's doing behind it. And I think that's why it works. And maybe that's intentional, maybe it's not, but
Thanks, Brad.
There's a
That was really
Yeah.
nice.
I
No,
don't
you're
know.
absolutely
Maybe
right.
I'm
I think
wrong,
that
You're right. I'm great.
you're right. I'm awesome. And that song's perfect. Whatever song we're talking about. No, but I think that a lot of times, especially then, sometimes I psych myself out thinking too much about where I should be landing and where I shouldn't, and some of the better parts come organically just from me feeling what everybody else is doing.
So, on the past 2 songs, because these are ones that I learned for the first tour that I did with you guys, especially New Storms for Older Lovers had a pretty techie part in the middle of it. Adam once described this song as maybe the most screamo song you guys ever wrote.
I
Yeah.
think
I'd agree with
the
that.
beginning of his like the fast part's definitely screamo.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But when it gets, I think the part you're talking about, the that's from another world that I don't know.
I found old demos of that, and this is pretty interesting because so I was recording all these demos on my point and shoot Canon camera, and in order to
Trying to get
Yeah,
sponsored?
yeah, we
And-
get it.
in order to multi-track, I would record that and then upload it to my computer and then play it out of my computer speakers and record another track playing over it. So
Wow.
there's one of that song where I think there's like at least 5 or 6 tracks, and it sounds insane. And there's like
Chad, we've got to hear
there's
that.
there's clapping, and the noise floor is like almost as loud as the music by that point of how many times it's been like recorded over.
Let's all for a
It
moment
was-
just imagine that part with 7 Chad guitar parts happening.
I'm
at
also
once.
imagining watching Chad play lap drums. I don't know if
Yeah.
there's a lap drum track.
Probably.
Yeah.
That,
Oh, there's
that
definitely
speaks to one of my
claps.
favorite dynamics and one of the most important dynamics in our band musically, the relationship between Brad and Chad. Chad writing a part with 7 guitars and lap drums, and then Brad being like, "Oh yeah, that's really cool. Let's take 5 of those guitars out." Brad consistently bringing Chad's genius back down to earth, to a tangible realm.
Chad, you're the best.
Would you say, are you pretty
Anyway.
proud of that part, the 7 guitar part?
I still think that part's
It's cool.
Yeah.
It took me a while to get. That might just speak to me, but I'm glad I know it now. It's sick.
And here's the other thing, like parts like that, that's not something we could even write anymore. I don't think if we tried. So that's why it's cool to listen to stuff like that. It's a time capsule sort of
Yeah.
of where we were
Yeah.
as a band. All records are, but truly, I can't even think of how we wrote that or why we did.
Yeah,
you
and
know,
I wouldn't do it again. And I won't
Exactly.
I won't go so far as to say that it was regrettable, but you know.
I don't think it's regrettable at all because you still get to play
I don't
those
think it's
parts
regrettable.
and it's cool, and you'd be like, "Oh, this was our band at one point." That's sick.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying.
So, Damaged Goods.
I also
Damaged Goods.
I
yeah.
definitely remember when I wrote that riff, just the and I felt like I had something. I guess I don't know how else to say it. I felt like it was something, and I just remember being really excited about it, like excited to share it with people.
You
Because you love to party.
You crushed a
so
beer
any
can on your
party
head.
riff was-
Chad played that and he was like, "Oh shit, yeah!" And he just smashed a beer can on his head.
This is right after he shotgunned it. Damaged Goods. How would you describe that song?
Ignorant.
Ignorant is the sole word to describe Damaged Goods.
Party.
There's a bass solo in it.
Yeah.
Was it-
It's a party song.
There's Brad playing pots and pans.
I'm
Yeah.
like going through the song each time we discuss a song, I'm like listening to it in my head real quick as we talk about it, and I definitely omitted the bass solo, but there is one,
There's definitely a
and it's
bass
one of the
solo.
many
Dude,
times, especially in that era, where I would goof off, and everyone would be like, "Yeah, do that."
Yeah, I think we tried to cram as much stuff into a short song as we could. So it's got everything: party riffs, pots and pans, bass solos.
Straight up guitar solo.
What else
like
can you want?
full on.
Yeah, like a
guitar
Yeah.
solo.
real solo.
Yeah.
Real
with,
solo
with
at
little
the end.
tappy.
I honestly,
It's fun.
maybe I'm making this up, but I recall on the board, was this called Party? Was it the demo? party song
Maybe
or
that or
something?
this
Castle
was-
Builders.
Party riff?
This had a snake on it. I think it was
Snake.
just called
Oh,
Snake.
that is Snake.
It was not the word snake either. It was a drawing of the snake
A
from
drawing of a snake,
Metallica's
that's
Black
right.
Album.
The
That's pretty awesome. So that really says it all.
Snake. The pots and pans part has maybe your most like rappy type cadence, Jordan.
Oh yeah.
Totally
Which is
sick.
saying something since most of our songs are very rappy.
Since we are rap.
But yeah,
rock
no, it
band,
definitely is.
so-
That part. I mean, yeah, that's
So
it's a
catchy.
weird
I love
song.
that part.
I think it's cool. I think that if I could that part of that song and then the very ending of that song, I still like. I don't know. That was a thing. People were, I guess, writing songs that had those parts, that had the sing along parts, the gang vocal parts,
Mm-hmm.
as evidenced by the actual gang vocals recorded all over the record, and like the weird mosh parts and stuff. I don't know. It's a weird song, but I think there's definitely cool parts.
Yeah, I think there's tons of.
And
cool
I think
parts.
the pots and pans part and the vocal part over top of it, like, it's pretty cool.
Very catchy.
It's another pop song. It's an LD pop song.
Those are the songs that stick out the most. That like I can draw a line between tracks on Rooms of the House and tracks on Somewhere. Like that you can like find a logical progression from point A to point B.
Yeah.
But there are certain songs that aspect of our band for the most part began and ended on the tracks which signify it. Like Damaged Goods. There's not a Damaged Goods on Wildlife or Rooms of the House.
Right.
That just kind of like was of the time
Yeah.
in a way that like New Storms is weird structurally and like has that like cool proggy part in the middle, the one we just talked about, and then like at the ending of the song is just like 2 minutes of mostly quiet,
It's true.
and like that I can look at New Storms and be like, okay, like First Reactions or whatever in Wildlife, Bitter Fruit, or pick a track, but Damaged Goods just kind of its life ends with Damaged Goods.
Yeah, and that's part
Yeah.
of I think every band's first record. Maybe we were trying different things, and also honestly believe we did take it seriously, but we maybe didn't, like Jordan said way earlier, there wasn't outside pressure for anything.
Right.
And I think we just kind of rolled with a lot of ideas and didn't overthink it too much, which Damaged Goods would have been that, because
Yeah.
I don't,
I think that's awesome. I think for the audience that this record captured, those are the reasons that it captured the audience. Like the kind of more brazen choices that you just rolled with.
Sure.
And then
yeah,
as you guys matured in your songwriting and wrote different records that you wanted to write, the audience hopefully goes on that journey with you and matures as well. And I think that happened, obviously.
Yeah.
So
No, I think that you sort of got at that point earlier when I was saying that if I could record Such Small Hands over again, I would do things, I wouldn't be so desperate sounding, or I wouldn't be so intensely dramatic. But I don't know, it's not a particularly productive line of thinking to say, oh, if I could do this again. One, because clearly you don't have that capability.
mhm.
And two, were you able to, it would not be the same thing. When you record something at a time in your life, you take a snapshot of where you were creatively, where you were emotionally, and that's what makes it special to you, and then also to the people that connected with it off the bat. And yeah, so like I can look at Damaged Goods and be like, oh man, like fuck, I wish I wouldn't have had everyone do that gang vocal part, but it needed to be what it was for it to be what it was. And picking it apart years later from a different perspective is a futile and pointless exercise.
The record after that takes a shift. So there's the intro. There's three pretty much bangers, if you want to call them that, which I don't anymore now that I said it out loud. And then it's kind of the record's first reprieve with Fall Down, and that is a tappy masterpiece. Chad, did you write that whole thing?
Yeah.
it's a Chad masterpiece.
Absolutely. Um,
It's absolutely
I
a
was-
masterpiece.
Chad, wow, dude.
What?
That song was all me. I'm just kidding. I'm teasing you, buddy. It was
Yeah.
Chad. He had the whole thing written.
That's awesome.
And well, we talked about this a little bit in the break, which other people couldn't hear. But that was one of the earliest demos that I have, and that was also, when I was speaking of listening to those other very tappy bands like Paucity and Maps and Atlases and things, and that was when that song started for me, and then that was one that I continued to play that kind of went through. So for me, it was like very early in my influences. It was probably one of the earliest for me.
It's a cool song. I think there's a very steady and cool groove that's present in it that I think, like Jordan was saying, you can draw a line, maybe not with the tapping guitar part, but with the vibe of the song to a lot of other songs later on in your catalog.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think so too. There's little, like, very small, subtle things that was foreshadowing what was to come. I think a lot of the extra instrumentation. I think that was the first LD song that had piano on it. I'm trying to think what else is in there.
Foot
Some
tapping.
clapping stuff.
The
we
stomping.
Stopping.
some stomping. Stomps would return later, both records, I believe. But yeah, it was one of the first songs where we played off of Jordan and then took a lyric after Jordan had recorded it. And I had an idea to add the slow clapping to kind of be is it rain? No, I can't remember the
Yeah,
lyric, but yeah.
Listen
and
listen to the rain upon the rooftops.
that's what it was. Yeah. So I think that was the very first time we've taken a lyric and then adjusted the music accordingly, which, later in the band we would do that a lot more, but I remember that
Nice.
as being the
That's really
thing.
cool.
Yeah.
Anything else you guys want to say about that song? I really like that one. And we've played it in a few different versions since I've been in the band, which has been really cool.
Yeah, we have.
It's been fun to rearrange that one for sure. Because there's not a ton of room for that in many of the songs in our catalog, but that one's kind of
Yeah, it is fun. You can do more with it. And
yeah.
that one is fun live as well, just because we had played it a handful of times, but then for years and years and years not played it or even thought about it really.
Right.
And
Kind
then
of forgot about it.
that couple tours ago brought it back to life, and yeah, it was fun revisiting something old and breathing new life into it.
Why did you not play it for so long, do you think?
Because we didn't, especially at the time, I don't think we had enough slower paced songs that we could pair it with, so it wouldn't just be out of nowhere weird. But now we do, so
Yeah.
it makes a little more sense.
Yeah, in some ways I think it just kind of got left by the wayside.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Like it wasn't an intentional omission on set lists. I think that we just didn't play it right off the bat, so that it kind of just got like forgotten until later.
Yep.
It was difficult logistically to do that one too. I think. I mean, and especially for me, we're playing like a short, sweaty set, which is what we were mostly doing at that time.
that's
And
true.
that
yeah.
that was a hard one to throw in because it's like, there's just a lot going on.
The next song. Well, first I want to touch on. It was towards the end of the touring cycle for this song when I officially met you guys and did a tour with you, or for this record rather.
Yep.
Yeah.
And this song I loved, Bury Your Flame, the next one on the record. And I was kind of blown away by how crazy the intro is. And I still really like how wild it is. Is there anything?
Yeah, it's wild on a lot
It's
of
wild on a
levels.
lot of levels. I don't even know if I'd be able to play this one. Would you guys ever play it again?
I think it'd be hard to play again, but I would. This one maybe goes hand in hand with Damaged Goods. Definitely not nearly as ignorant, but it's more of a rock and roll song. And
Yeah.
is this the first song where we had a chorus part, guys? Maybe that we went back to.
Yeah.
It might be, honestly.
Yeah.
And also, this was the other track, like we mentioned before, that was kind of written outside of these other ones. So, with Said the King and Such Small Hands. So, we were trying a lot of different directions at the time. And I think it shows in this song quite a bit.
Who wrote the intro
Kev, right?
I think you know
Yeah,
the
dude,
answer
I
to
think
that
you know.
before you even ask.
I like the part where
Kevin burned
where
that Dugan.
Chad just plays that one note. He just goes, "Wow."
Yeah, that what I'd like to go back and witness that happening for the first time.
That light bulb
We
turning
definitely
on.
we definitely were I always think of us as being self-serious on occasion to a fault. And then I think about it and I'm like, we've actually got a lot of like goofy fun parts in songs from back in the day that like
Yeah.
clearly there was a sense of humor to a degree with
Mhm.
that. Like not like we're making a fart joke in a song, but like we knew it was fun.
Oh, for sure. That note, that Chad solo note, that's all it is. I'm sure someone had the idea as a joke and then we're like, okay, that's awesome. Let's just keep it.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool moments
about that.
on the record like that, where it's like, man, I know they would never do it again, but I'm glad they kept that ridiculous part. Moving kind of through some of these other songs, maybe a little quicker because we're not even halfway through them. It's a
It's a
long record.
long
It's
record.
it's 2 hours long.
I think Wildlife is longer.
I think
actually.
Wildlife is like 8 minutes longer. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Only
it's
just.
just barely.
Last Blues for Bloody Knuckles. This song I re-listened to today, and I actually forgot the second half of it. I think there was a while where I would kind of skip it and not remembering that it has that whole like kind of proggy ending. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's an interesting song because it's pretty long. It's I think upwards of 5 minutes. I don't know anything.
I still stand by this song. I think it's cool. I think we were trying things that would show themselves more later.
This was kind of a thread too between Sad Prayers and New Storms, where there were little nuggets of like reprise from other songs, like either rhythmic patterns or transitions or something that were like this was the one where we kind of like glued
Trying
those
to glue 'em.
things
So-
all together.
Jordan, do you want to really quickly speak to that? Because I think that
Yeah. Well, I mentioned earlier when we were first talking before we got into the track listing about how we kind of like started fitting different connected pieces in with other connected pieces, and that's what ended up making the record so long and lofty. And that I think those 3 tracks, the ones Vass just mentioned, New Storms for Older Lovers, Last Blues for Bloody Knuckles, and Sad Prayers for Guilty Bodies, were a big part of that. And I think that before I knew how they'd be connected thematically, they were connected musically. I think that we had all 3 of those songs written. Maybe I'm wrong. Am I wrong?
I don't remember the
don't really
order of
either,
operations
but-
here.
I do.
But anyway,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I do remember we were very intentional about those 3 tracks being together musically as well as thematically on your end. So it must have gone hand in hand somehow.
Yeah, you're probably right. So anyway, so those 3 songs involve the same set of characters. There were 2 connected concurrent divorces, and those 3 songs represent 3 different conversations at different points chronologically in the dissolution of 2 marriages. So at least from my end, but I can't speak obviously to you musicians, but I think that, I don't know, I feel fairly safe in saying I think those are pretty important benchmarks on our trajectory as La Dispute. They were,
I think also they're the first tracks I helped write.
that could be.
I'm pretty sure New Storms was the first one that we started writing since I joined the band
Yeah,
and like
I
got
think
to write
you're
my
right.
own parts and
Okay.
everything.
I think it was
So it was Vass.
yeah, it was
Go ahead, Jed.
What?
well it's funny because I have the dates that these things popped up in New Storms February 5, 2008, Sad Prayers February 16, 2008. And I think Last Blues we did at some point after.
And we were doing those in those like marathon practices we do for like 8
Right.
hours on a Sunday. And I think we were like writing them congruently. I would say like New Storms wasn't finished when Sad Prayers was started. Like there was kind of some back and forth between
And that's
all of
because we
those.
were trying to connect them. So we were mindful at the
Right.
time of how can we allude to this even before, because we didn't really know what Jordan's lyrics were going to be yet, even if he had spoken about the content. So yeah, we wanted to allude to them, and
Sure.
I don't know.
So that definitely that process musically and lyrically is a pretty clear antecedent to Wildlife for sure. But then definitely I think to Rooms of the House. It was the first time from my perspective, it was the first time that I'd I mean there's other tracks on the record. Fall Down is allegorical. Said the King is somewhat autobiographical, but it's in large part allegorical as well. But those three for me were my first stab at any sort of narrative storytelling and also writing from another person's perspective. So like I think that going back to drawing a line between recent work and the tracks on Somewhere, for me that's a pretty clear starting point for Rooms of the House, which is all almost entirely told from fictional characters'
Right.
perspectives. It was the first time that I had to like sit and put myself in the position and empathize with another person before taking on something that hadn't actually happened directly to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And that you did that in Wildlife as well. I think all three records have that.
For sure. But yeah, then also the exchange between us building those songs musically and connecting parts over an album. And that's a thing that
And those three tracks too, I think probably brought us to that point where we were maybe speaking more about how the entire record was going to come together because they're evenly spaced throughout. So I'm sure
Yeah.
that gave us a little better idea of the full picture, maybe. At least helped us fill in some of the gaps.
definitely. But Last Blues is kind of the one that, at least me, like probably because I don't ever listen to the record and because we kept playing New Storms and Sad Prayers even recently. But we stopped somewhere along the line, probably because it is a bit more ambitious to play, but also because it's not so obviously engaging. Like
It's
New
not-
Storms and Sad Prayers have
Yeah, it's not hooky.
have like sing along
Right.
parts and like people get excited and move around when we play them, and that's kind of how we've continued to utilize our back catalog Somewhere in particular by like playing ones that people go off to.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yep. But maybe someday we'll bring it back. Who knows?
Well, it did have a little reprise on that split. We did another version of it.
That's true. We
Oh
did.
yeah.
I feel like that it often gets forgotten, at least by us maybe.
Oh
Yeah, I
definitely.
forgot that you guys played it that whole tour until I
Yeah,
listened.
we did.
I listened to
yeah.
it,
Did we really?
Yeah.
and I forgot until the second half came in, and I was like, "Oh, that's this song." I had forgotten about it, but it's great. Castle Builders is probably the most party song, correct? The biggest party.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Uh,
another.
I would say Damaged Goods is a bigger
Just
part,
add it to the
but
party.
I feel you.
Yeah.
It's definitely in the party.
It has the
in
biggest
the
party,
party. It's-
ending.
It's Damaged Goods' right hand man for sure. Like,
Oh, they go
They
to parties
definitely do.
together, and
Yeah, well, that's the
Yeah.
other like important building block on the record is there's the 3 divorce songs and then there's the 4 party songs that represent different stages of smashing beer cans on your face. Castle Builders is installment number 3. It's the Return of the King, and then we decided to do the one that everyone forgot came out, which is later in the record.
yeah.
That's a good joke. It's a bad
But-
joke. Anyway,
I think Castle Builders, listening back to it, this record definitely has some positive light in it along the way. This one has a really outspokenly positive message, especially towards the end.
True.
yeah.
And is
totally.
that unique to this song in particular, do you think? You
I think
haven't really
that-
written a song in this way since that, I don't think.
No, I think the other song that has shadows of that mentality
LLC.
is The Last Lost Continent, and
Yep.
then it's presented in a much more dramatic in visceral fashion. Castle Builders is definitely like, I think probably it's the only song accepting those similarities, that's driving point is a sense of positivity, at least as far as album tracks goes.
Yeah.
Like the Chad, what is it, 11, the Here Here track,
Yep.
kind of has a similar feel, or 9 has a similar feel. No, that's a good point. There's not a lot of uplifting songs in our catalog, and Castle Builders is about. I mean, you could say it's about partying. It's not, but like it's about being with your friends and protecting your friends and keeping the people that you love close. And I still, people come up to me and show me Castle Builders lyric tattoos probably more than any other song.
Yeah.
That's
And
cool.
maybe that's why.
Like we are not our failures. That whole we are not our failures. We're the only the extent to which we love.
Yeah.
I see that on people's arms quite a bit, which is maybe we need to write another positive song.
There you go, Jordan.
No,
I just
I
thought
don't
it
know,
was
it's kinda
interesting.
cool to think about.
Yes.
I think Chad, musically, that maybe you were the driving force behind that one. It's a lot of those riffs yours, I think.
Oh,
Yeah.
you can hear it and
You can
and
still
know
hear it.
that's true.
Yeah, I definitely
Um,
remember the first riff.
That one came together really quick. I remember. I think it was.
toward
that
the
was pretty
end.
fun to write. Yep, towards the end, and I don't know. Some songs just kind of fall. Everything falls into place, and that was definitely one of them. But still a cool track. I like that one.
Yeah. Troy Odie laughing in
Yeah,
the background at
There's
the end
some
of it.
fun stuff. A lot of overdubs on that one. And this is one of the songs as well where we were trying to incorporate the 7 in, definitely at the end there.
Oh yeah.
But
Is this whole song in 7?
no,
Okay.
it's just at the end.
When playing the end of this song live, have you ever just wanted to yell "fuck yeah" into the mic like as loud as you can?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah.
And I
think
have
yell it every
I feel
time
like
we play.
that
It has that slow down part that I forgot about until this
I
moment.
feel like it's probably one of the only songs in which members of the band that aren't me jump into the crowd. I feel like Kevin has jumped into the crowd there. Vass, I feel like you've jumped into the crowd there.
I used to jump a lot. I was like down with. I would put my bass
Yeah,
down.
because
though.
you
I don't wanna
definitely
hurt
don't need to,
people.
and you definitely don't need to. Yeah, you definitely don't need to play. I was not thinking about other people's well-being. I was just thinking about the fact that
It
everything
doesn't
kind
add
of
a
falls
whole
apart.
lot.
So it's
I'm
just
playing
like
the same
you
part.
can pretty much throw shit and just jump in the crowd.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the end too. That we always do like the rock star ending, and that gives me enough time to get back to the stage and sort it out.
So the next song, a fan favorite. I'm looking right now at the length on a track listing, and it's 4 minutes and 20 seconds long. Do you wanna expand upon that in any way,
What track are
Then
we on?
again,
Andrea?
oh no,
Oh, pass.
dude, I totally thought it was a different song.
Uh,
Wait, what
that
song
was
are we on?
That was the best intro to any song I've done, and it was for Andrea.
And I fucked it up.
It's okay. So we're talking about Andrea. It's 4 minutes
The
20
second
seconds
best
long.
intro to the song.
A well-loved song for sure. Maybe the most screamed song other than Smutch Small Hands. The last few tours we've done, you've made a quick mention of why you prefer not to play it, Jordan.
Yeah.
Do you want to expand on that at all, or do you want to talk about the song itself, how it came together? It's a really interesting song.
It
It has a slide.
yeah, it
guitar.
definitely
It
has
has
a slide
slide guitar
guitar.
in the whole thing.
Yes.
I'm bad at playing it.
Remember thinking that I remember suggesting that it should be instrumental after hearing it. I don't know. I guess I disagree with the concept as an older person, and I think that in some ways the sentiments expressed harbor the risk of being detrimental to somebody who attaches themselves too closely to it. And I think that there is always the possibility when you present something in the public forum and perform it on a stage that people take what you say as being instructive or informative or use it as a coping mechanism for something, as if the person writing it comes from an area of expertise or has arrived on the other side of whatever they're talking about unscathed. And I guess that's why if we play that song, I think it deserves a caveat, because I think buying into the concept in the song could potentially hold somebody back from doing the healing necessary after something goes awry. And I also think that it represents it represents kind of an impulsive, I don't want to say immature, but an impulsive response to something, I guess. So that's my addendum to it years later. That's about it.
Slide guitar.
Slide guitar. Moving on.
Kev.
Actually,
I play it.
I remember, what was the record that came out right around then that Brad, you listened to a
Poison the
lot?
Well.
Oh, Poison.
Okay.
Poison the Well.
It was versions by Poison the Well, and they had Slide everywhere, and I thought it was awesome.
That's where that came from.
Yeah, I don't even know how Chad. That must have been a you song, right? That's a
The
Chad
core-
song.
The
I think
core
the
structure is definitely
the,
Chad.
the chords were.
Yeah.
I mean,
The
it's
slide was not.
it's basically just like 12-bar blues type stuff.
Yeah,
So I mean, it's
sure. It's another. I think it kind of couples well with Said the King, because a lot of it is those kind of roomy drum beats and things like that, which I liked a lot of that kind of stuff at the time as well. So even some of these songs that are a little more rhythmic, like this one, a lot of times I would just have a drum idea and bring it to you guys, and Chad, you might riff over it or something, or Vessel
Yeah.
play a bass part, but it's not something we do very often anymore. I think that was pretty unique to this record.
yeah. I think that's where a lot of the more just sustained chords come from, because
Yeah,
it's coming from the groove.
Chad, do we have dueling solos in this song, or do we just do that live?
No, there's definitely dueling solos in it.
It's
there's
surreal.
definitely dueling solos. Yeah.
I guess I need to listen to it again.
Yeah,
No, it's on the record as well.
Yeah.
You guys trade bars, and that's also
Oh,
very
sure,
blues
sure.
influenced.
Yep.
You know, even back then we were jamming a bit of blues.
The next song on the record is called Then Again, Maybe You Were Right. What's
That's
going on in
right.
this song?
Sorry, what?
Oh, what's going on in this song?
That is the ultimate question.
this is a song that came from our graveyard of songs. Like
Yeah.
it's like cut and paste from riffs that got turned down from other songs.
It's definitely the garbage heap of
It's
the
definitely-
record that we just took bits and pieces.
It needed to be there to make all the
refurbished.
numbers work.
Yeah.
And that's what, like, it serves that function, and then that's all.
Speaking of numbers, I was listening to it, and there are 7 pick slides in this song.
Yeah, that was intentional. Keeping with the theme of 7.
This, I'm pretty sure, this was the last track we wrote for the record. Is that right?
I think so
Because
I
think so.
remember
because it
going
was
in.
kind of a filler. We needed it to
Make the
suit
The
some
numbers.
purpose, but the
Yeah.
numbers thing. But I do remember it. We just did it in one really quick practice, and we all were just
Yeah.
laughing. Like we were having fun writing this song, and all the like really serious parts had been written, and I think we were just kind of like, let's just have fun with this one. And yeah, I don't even remember what it sounds like.
I
but
don't
know
either.
it's
I think
wild.
that
There's a whole
I
section
do.
where the riff is pick slides.
I laughed until I couldn't get the vocal part right, and we had to comp it.
Really,
Yeah, you don't remember that?
I didn't know that either.
There's
remember
like one
that.
part in the song that I just could not get it to fit. I couldn't land at the right spot, and I think because we were so close to being done with the record,
Yeah,
that we were just like whatever, which is not something we have ever really done. There's like a few spots, but yeah, it's weird.
No, I was gonna say quickly how we recorded this record was pretty unique. Not as far as recording goes, but to us, we haven't done it since then. So we recorded in Grand Rapids, so we had the luxury of coming and going as we finish songs, and finishing things on free time, which you kind of need when you're working full time and people at school and stuff
Yeah.
as well. But I just mean that certain songs are being finished and that might spark an idea how to finish another track, which again in this case it fulfilled a purpose. But also I remember at the time, Jordan, you did not like doing vocal comps. You wanted the takes to be
Yeah.
complete, which was pretty cool too. I mean, a lot of that, it is a very, very heavily edited record, which I regret a lot. But that is a very cool part about a lot of your vocal stuff is either one or two takes besides that song. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about. There's a lot of words on that record. I was a young,
Yeah.
I was a younger
I think
man.
it actually. I also think it was maybe like a single take, and we were just like, "What if we just move it over a beat?"
Yeah.
and then it lined
I
up.
think you're right. I think there was just the one part that I didn't get right, so we just nudged it.
But then you had never performed it, so trying to ever do it live just like didn't make. I know that was very hard for you to wrap your head around.
Definitely. I mean, that song has got to be hard for anyone to wrap their head around.
How many times have we played it live?
I bet
Once?
one time.
I think
No,
one
more
More
than
than
time.
once.
Oh, really?
Definitely more than once. I remember explicitly. I can like picture it in my mind because we did that show that was all of somewhere
Yeah.
in Howell maybe.
Yep.
There was we played it once in Indiana in like maybe Indianapolis or Bloomington or something.
Okay. So maybe twice?
I would say there's got to be at least one more.
Or maybe
like,
three
dud
times
time
because maybe
that
we did the
era.
record. Did we do the whole record twice?
No. Just once.
Just once.
I think just that one time. Yeah.
Okay.
But
So
we'll
32
just,
pick
for
slides
safety's
happened
sake,
in
we'll
those
say we
sets.
played it 3 times ever.
Less than 10.
It's
for sure.
definitely
Yeah.
one of the least performed songs, if not.
I would say
Well,
the.
There's definitely one more.
Hit me with it. Oh, I know it.
We'll get there.
It'll come up.
Oh,
Grand
yeah.
finale.
Yep.
And it,
Foreshadowing.
the title. Then again, maybe you're right. Is an answer to the last line in Damaged Goods. I do remember that. I could not tell you any of the lyrics. I don't think without looking them up because it's been so long. But
Oh, dude.
The
Speaking
last line
of
of-
lyrics.
go on.
No, you go on first.
I was gonna say the last line in Damaged Goods was "You were wrong," and then that song's called "Then Again, Maybe You Were Right." So there's some
That's
crazy Nabokovian Craig Finn. It's not that cool. I'm just joking. I don't know. It's Easter egg.
Easter egg there.
The lyrics to Bury Your Flame. Do you still think that the future is a whore?
Definitely not. I think that sounded cool and dramatic. I would also never write that lyric ever again.
Okay, moving on.
Moving on.
Sad Prayers for Guilty Bodies. Another song that we've been playing recently. Great song. Let's touch upon that. It's the last in the set of 3.
As I recall, this was also one of the last tracks we wrote. So you can kind of feel it leaning towards what Wildlife is going to be a little bit more. It's got a lot of cleaner riffs and
I'm a big
Yeah.
fan of the clean picking guitars with heavy vocals. Like the first third of that song is screamo, and like you said, it leads into what we would do later a lot of the time with cleaner parts and like being intense without being heavy. But on the flip side of that coin, at the end of that song is the heaviest part on that whole record.
Dude, it's
Yeah.
so heavy. I really like that song. I think, speaking to what you said, Brad, about it being a foreshadowing for things on Wildlife, I agree, which makes the nod to Vancouver all the more interesting. Like the waltz part at the end
yeah.
that was harkening back to Surgeon and the Scientist on Vancouver.
That's
It's
true.
funny.
We were trying to reference the older stuff there. Very interesting. I forgot about that.
It's like the through line between records.
Yeah, we did a lot of that. I mean, there's a ton of that lyrically, record to record, which is I mentioned Joanna Newsom, but the Hold Steady also in 2006 was a band that I listened to incessantly. But we did a lot of that musically too, like quoting or kind of slyly referencing things we'd done previously. That's the biggest one on this record, probably, is the waltz part. Going back to the song, I think that song's really cool. I remember there aren't a whole lot of epiphanies that I remember from writing across our entire back catalog, but I remember trying to finish this song and it being the end of those 3 divorce songs and being stuck for a long time until the marriage vows thing occurred to me, and I fought internally for so long thinking it was too corny and too obvious, but I like that creative choice still to this day, and I think that it, coupled with the like really cool, heavy, slow ending, is really impactful.
Yeah, same.
I like that song.
Me too.
Yeah, anything I like that song too. Anything else you want to add in as far as anecdotes for that?
Trying to think of any musical things. Hey, do you guys remember who wrote that first riff? Was that Vass? First little clean bit?
No,
I wouldn't have wrote it on guitar.
yeah, I found
'cause I
a
didn't start writing.
I found a pretty early demo of that. It was actually right after New Storms for me.
Okay, cool.
And I definitely a lot of, pretty much all this stuff I was writing on a classical guitar, and I think that's where a lot of like the more picking stuff comes from, is
Yeah.
because I was doing a lot of basically finger picking.
Yeah, I didn't start writing songs on guitar on this record.
That wasn't until Wildlife. That's right.
So, we have two left. The closers of the record. Next one, Last Lost Continent, being maybe the culminating piece, and then the Nobody Not Even the Rain kind of being the release from that. Let's talk about Last Lost Continent. Probably my favorite from the record.
I would say it's my favorite from the record.
Yeah, same.
It's definitely the most interesting. It's wild. It kind of falls into that same thing that we were doing, where it would have a part that goes on for like a couple minutes with like small variations on it, and we would kind of come in and come out of the same core riff or progression. We did some like real cool. I remember Brad and I doing some real advantageous like in and out stuff.
Yeah, there's a
that
lot of
I still love doing, like that syncopated
polyrhythms
stuff. Yeah.
between. Yeah. Also, I think that this song is the perfect example of running with ideas, but I think maybe in a more restrained fashion. I don't mean, obviously, 12-minute song is not restraint, but
It
I
was
mean
8
the,
when
the
we-
parts
when we
really.
thought it was 8.
We thought it was 8 minutes.
Which is still long.
Yeah,
It's still rude.
it is. But I think there's a lot of little motifs musically that run throughout the entire song and even harken back to earlier songs on the record. So it's kind of pulling everything together at the end musically. A lot of that was very intentional, maybe some of it not, but this was maybe the most thought out individual song.
It was the grand finale.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even this is another good example of working pretty closely with Jordan, not individual lyrics, but I think there were a lot of parts that you were involved with saying this should be a little bit longer because I want to do something
Yeah.
more here. And I think it shows as well the play between the lyrics and the music.
I think that it's a 12-minute song, and there's a lot of, from a lyrical standpoint, information condensed in it. And I think that it held a certain weight because it was the finale. It was meant to be, to a degree, conclusive and meant to like encapsulate a lot of the themes discussed prior in the record. So it required that kind of back and forth during writing. But I think what I love the most about the song is how much it breathes comparatively. And obviously you're going to have that when a song is 12 minutes long, but so many of our songs have so much information packed in them because of the nature of the subject matter and like me approaching my output narratively. But like there's so much space where you guys do so many cool things.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of parts that don't have vocals, which is
Yeah.
pretty rare.
And I think
And I think a lot of those are softer parts too. And that's when it gets into some really cool subtleties of the structure
Yeah.
of that song.
And I think it plays into, I think it makes, I don't know, they feel more than anything else we've ever done. Like it's operatic, their movements. And I think that what makes the lyrics poignant and impactful, especially the ending, is that you have those moments where the tension builds musically.
Yeah.
It doesn't, it's never,
a lot of tension and a lot of release.
yeah, tons. And that, like, the payoff at the end. And it's never felt 12 minutes to me, ever. Playing it,
Yeah.
listening to it. It's always felt like it's over suddenly. And I think that speaks to how interesting the bridges between parts are, I guess.
I think it also has some of the hopeful lyrics at the end, and
Yeah.
it has some of I think your most interesting, definitely on this record, just like placement. There's the parts where you're like very succinctly connected with like the kind of just chord hits that are happening towards the
Yeah.
end. Yeah, there's just really cool vocal placement that I think lends itself a lot to the impactfulness of when you actually are delivering vocals, given how much space there is in the song musically.
Yeah. Thank you. Also.
Whatever, dude.
Going back to the theme of this conversation, the drawing lines between songs. And I think you can like sort of do that with this song and King Park in a way.
Yeah, that kind of linear structure is a big
Yeah.
part in both, and the peaks and valleys to an extreme that other songs don't
Sure.
get.
And like I think that Last Lost Continent is much more abstract in a lot of ways. It doesn't have like, when we wrote King Park, Fast Food wrote that song and then the pieces were added together, whatever. It was like opening, it's exposition for so long. It's like opening scene, next scene, next scene. And Last Lost Continent is much more like based on a feeling, but there is still that middle section lyrically where I talk about that guy, the parking lot by the hardware store.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah. It's like the first time that death was broached as a subject prior to Wildlife, which is so heavy on mortality.
Oh yeah.
Do you think maybe that's what sparked some of the ideas for Wildlife was when after you wrote the song, or did that come later?
No, I think, yeah. I mean, I don't know if I could like, obviously you can't go back into a previous mindset, but maybe this is like revisionist history to a degree, but I think it had to have like that part in that song is the first like strictly observational confessional where I'm talking about personal issues, but I'm relating them to the people that inhabit my surroundings and becoming empathetic to how everyone processes life and its struggles. And then that's so much of what it's almost like Wildlife is that specific moment fleshed out over an entire album.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
like looking at your own life and how it relates to the tragedies that occur almost daily in your immediate proximity. So
Yeah, I just wasn't sure if there was a moment that you kind of were like, oh, I think I want to explore this more, but
I-
maybe it wasn't as deliberate as that.
I there probably was, honestly. It's
Yeah.
it's hard to think back to that, but that was the ending of that record, and it was one of the last things we did on that record. And then immediately after that, the focus shifted, and it probably wasn't terribly long after that record came out that I had the title and concept for Wildlife. Maybe yes.
Chad, do you remember any specific things about writing any of those parts? There's a lot of them in that one, but
Yeah.
there's definitely Chad all over the place.
Yeah, and I think there was also a lot of Kevin. And I think we almost it almost alternated. Like I don't remember specifically, like maybe I wrote the first part and Kevin wrote the second and I wrote the third and I don't think it's that linear, but there was definitely a lot of both, I felt like. And we almost just like traded.
Yeah, you guys did trade a lot. That's true.
But I think I guess it's hard to say. I think the first part that was written for that song is not the first. It's not the introduction to that song. I think it was sort of after that build. It is the first thing that I remember being.
I think you're right, actually.
We played it live before the song was done, or we played that part back when we would do that on occasion.
It's like an introduction, yeah. Yeah, and we haven't really spoken much about it, I guess, but Kevin, he was a big part of this record. Like I don't want to make it sound like we wrote a whole bunch of stuff and Kevin did nothing. He did have a big part of this record.
Yeah.
So Kev, wherever you are, what's up, dude?
What's up, Kev?
If we want to finish out going through it song by song, this is the other bookend to the record. Nobody, Not Even the Rain, hinting at maybe this is a song that's never been played before.
Once.
One time, because we did a show once that we played this whole record, but that would have been the only time we would have ever felt the need to play this.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
truly an outro.
It's a bookend. But yeah, it I think the only way the intro could work was if it was paired with something.
I would say that Nobody Not Even the Rain was made as the ending before we had Last Lost Continent and
Yeah,
other tracks.
that's
Like
right.
it was built for that at the end.
Well, even we made sure the tempo matched at the end of LLC so that it would flow
Right.
perfectly into that. So it was definitely thought out a great deal. And the whole thing is such an obvious
Reprise.
reprise.
Or-
Yeah, the just the way the guitar is, the drum beat's the same. Like,
Lyrics,
you know, we wanted it to
Yeah.
be blatantly obvious. Yeah.
the reference in the title.
Yep.
I think it works. I mean, it's definitely like really,
Yeah, I think it
really
does work, too.
sappy sounding, but I think it's
Yeah.
a cool way to let it ride out after the Last Lost Continent ends with such weight, and then there's kind of just this like opportunity to
Resolve.
yeah.
I liked that it made you feel like Last Lost Continent made you feel, and then it ended, and you're like,
Yeah,
Oh,
there was a
shit.
there was definitely a moment where I wanted that to be the ending.
I was an advocate for that ending as well. I think that the way songs like Ed Ben's end on Wildlife, like obviously this happens later, and it has those seconds before the next track starts, and you're just left to kind of deal
Yeah.
with it on your own and like feel it. I really love making something or hearing something that does that to you and kind of fucks you up for a second and then gives you that time to reflect on it. I think that, I mean, at the time I was 19, so I'm sure I didn't have this kind of bigger picture of like why I wanted LLC to be the end. But now looking back, I think I prefer having things not resolve themselves. But this song serves that purpose of resolution that I think is important, especially on an hour-long
Yeah.
piece of work.
I think it all depends on what precedes it. Like, I mean, rooms kind of ends a bit on a resolution. It's a touch more open ended, but it still has like a feeling of finality. Like there's an opportunity to process it directly in song, whereas Wildlife kind of it has a definitive ending, and it has the two summary songs at the ending, but it kind of also ends a bit more inconclusively. So I think I don't know. I guess it depends on the project.
Absolutely. And like I said, I don't think I had that
Yeah,
mind
for
at
sure.
that time. But when I look at it now, I think
I think
I would have preferred
Not have
to
it.
not have it.
I definitely went back and forth, I remember. And I think in the end I was glad that it was there.
If I could do it again, I think that I would put. Then again, maybe you were right. Also, at the end, after Nobody Not Even the Rain. So it would end, and it'd be like, doo, doo, and then it would go into
Extra pick slides.
that fucking crazy. Damn. I wish that could just.
Oh,
You could
man.
do.
I
We
do
could
too
repress
now.
it and then have it be one of those looped.
live break.
It
Just a loop, yeah.
keeps playing. You fall asleep listening to the record, and you wake up in a fever dream at 3 o'clock in the morning, and then again, maybe you're right, it's still playing through your stereo. It's terrifying. I remember writing a horror short story.
So, if any of you guys wanted to say a few words about what were your best memories of that time, kind of this record coming out, making it, and touring on it. You guys toured on it for years,
10 years.
10 years.
We've toured on it for 10 years. I mean, obviously, it's all of those things. It was like when we were first, Vast said 8-hour practices on Sunday, but we were getting together multiple times a week.
3 times a week.
Yeah, and we were just like, this is what we pushed for. It's the only thing that we did. And I remember like all those shows in like the library basement in Fruitport, or like in church basements and in VFW halls, and then getting home at like 4 in the morning on Friday nights after like all of our friends were already ending their parties or like in bed. But I don't know, I guess writing those songs, like spending inordinate amounts of time fine tuning them together and immersing ourselves creatively in something that we understood less concretely than we do now. It was more a feeling. It was less cerebral, I think, in a way. You know, we were just kind
Riding the wave, bro.
of feeling it out. Yeah, it wasn't like
Yeah.
we didn't have these like long conceptual conversations or like
There was some.
there were definitely some, but I think that it derived from, I don't know, a really like human place. I don't want to sound super like weird and metaphysical, but
Damn, I wish we had started
right,
with metaphysical.
yeah. Set the tone.
Like go back and do this whole conversation
Instead of
over.
instead of mad
about
jokes
how the
about
riffs came to me.
No, I mean like it just like it felt very natural, and we were kids. We were like 20. We were 20 or 19, and then we were just getting in a fucking van, and Brad was booking shows on BYOFL and on MySpace. But we were like, you know, playing house shows across the country and making donation money and eating saltine crackers with peanut butter and sriracha, and I don't know.
We were definitely
We
just
were having
having
a fuck
lot
ton
of
of fun. That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I don't have any bad memories from that era.
I mean, this was like in going through my photos, which is like my digital memory.
from your Canon
From his
camera.
from
my
wonderful Nikon
Canon-
Coolpix with
Canon SP400. And there's some pretty great photos that I want to share with you guys because it's pretty funny. There's one with my shirt off and I have raisin packets all over my body.
Oh my god.
I remember it was so hot in the van that we were just sticking them to me and they would just stay there.
dude, that's hilarious.
There's also a lot of adorable Jordan and Kevin.
Yeah, there are a
photos.
lot of like
Aw.
me and Kev
Just-
hugging or wrestling.
Adorable.
That's great. I want to see those, dude.
Yeah.
We'll compile them somehow and include a bunch
Yeah,
of
A
them.
maybe
link to
we'll-
a Flickr
yeah.
page,
Put some photos into.
Photo bucket.
photo bucket, yeah, image shack. Dude, I don't know. There's some fun stories. There are also some times where we like stayed super seedy places and had terrible experiences running away
Yeah.
from
Yeah,
people snorting coke off our
Those make good
CDs and
stories,
shit.
though.
But like, yeah, I definitely.
But now those are good
Love the-
memories.
Oh, they're great. They're great
Yeah.
memories. So that's definitely like, yeah, it is a unique attachment the record does for us. It's kind of fun to talk about it because I don't ever think about it.
Yeah.
Damn. Yeah, I never do either, and I am like right now for the first time, and it's like stunning.
Yeah, I'm like,
Because like I can remember the plights of writing latter records and being, I guess, just like a sentient young
Yeah.
adult and being depressed, and somewhere got none of it. I remember being a teen, being bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and us staying up till 6 a.m. to steal like the inflatable Santa Claus outside the neighbor's house. Just like crazy, just good, like crazy young person things for like 3
doing like
years.
24-hour drives to get from point A to point B.
Yeah.
Looking up directions on MapQuest.
Yeah.
Dude, I remember like starting out and like playing shows with touring bands and having like older guys be like, yeah, back in my day, you know, the way we booked shows is we went to the record store and there was a cork board and we like picked flyers off the wall and we called phone numbers on flyers. Now we're talking about booking on MySpace like it was like 1982. Like this is like,
And
yeah, like
freaking
this is like We
MapQuest.
Jam Econo or like
It's
Like,
very
I
I
specific.
feel like we could wax poetic about early touring for another 2 hours.
You know, I think a lot of that youthfulness, I really think shows itself on the record, like maybe some of the more less serious, fun riffs and things like that.
and some of the more serious, like super lofty stuff
Yeah,
that I think now we would talk ourselves out of by being like that's
Yeah.
impractical or
exactly.
that's like too confusing or something.
Right.
On both sides of that, we can attribute it to youth.
yeah, for sure.
A little more carefree. Yeah.
We should shoot like a Salad Days-esque documentary about the Midwest screamo scene circa 2006, and instead of like having like archive shots of old show flyers with like Bad Brains and Wipers and shit, it just like it's just screenshots of old like
MySpace bulletins.
Packard Bell like Dell computers with like MySpace bulletins.
Oh
It's a
man,
brilliant idea.
and all that MySpace stuff too. Like we got so deep into it leading up to this record. We were doing
Oh yeah,
like
like
little snippets and poems and taking photos on things, and it all tied together. And that was like our viral marketing
Yeah,
strategy.
holy
back
shit,
then.
we put a lot of work into that.
And I think I've got photos of that stuff too. That
a
I'll
lot of
include
I
with
would do a
this, but
painting every week for a track from the record. I think a lot of those are at your
They're at my house in
or
Michigan.
I did.
Yeah.
I like
Yeah.
wrote stories that pertain to the content. There, you had one, Brad, that was like a poem I wrote on a piece of glass or something.
Yeah, there's one on glass, one on a sheet metal. Vest did a painting on an actual snare drum.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, I'll try to find this stuff.
I like drummed the
interesting.
paint on.
Yeah,
Like, I used
did.
paintbrushes, but I hit it, and because we did like time lapse
yeah.
videos, and this reminds me too, and this is a whole nother conversation in its own, so we probably shouldn't get into it. But Here was the like predecessor thematically to that kind of mentality, like the tease that we
Yeah.
did.
yeah, yeah. Because
Man,
isn't
there's
the
just
first?
so much.
Is it the first here that references what would be on somewhere a little bit, or do I have
Yeah,
that
'cause
wrong?
it came with the untitled 7-inch.
That's
So it was
right.
like a preview, like a
Yeah,
teaser
it's-
trailer for the record that people didn't know was
The-
existing.
That's
and there's
right.
like the E. Cummings poem and the retelling of that fairy tale, the folk tale,
Yes.
and
So-
the Edgar Allan Poe
sto-
sort of
poem.
retelling, which is
And
Fall
this-
Down.
And then the story of Sisyphus.
Oh yeah,
maybe?
Myth of
Is that-
That's on the
Sisyphus,
second year
Camus.
here.
Is that? No, I think that's the first one.
That's my second
it?
song.
No, it's the
No,
first
you're
one because
right. It's the
that's
first song.
Castle Builders references Sisyphus rolling the stone up the hill.
You're right.
Anyway,
Maybe we'll do a separate thing about that stuff. But
There's so much to. I mean,
so much.
yeah, it's a pretty wild. And then once you kind of get the ball rolling, we trigger these memories that would otherwise have just laid dormant. I think.
Yeah, true. Well, we can include some of those little tracks and photos and stuff in the USB. That'll be cool.
anyway, who? What? It's been a long day.
Corey, any closing thoughts?
I think it goes without saying that this conversation is happening because this record means a lot to a lot of people. I mean, it marks, again, for me personally, when I met you, got to do a tour with you, and that set in motion events leading me to being in the band. So
Yeah.
I think we all look at the record through different lenses, especially given the amount of time that has elapsed since it came out. But you can't take away
Yeah.
sort of the memories attached to it and the way that, especially the ways that it made you feel for you guys making it and me hearing it in the actual time that it came out. So
I should have mentioned this earlier, but still, like, some of the more surreal moments for me in reference to our band were how many people who were 20 years my senior or our senior came up to me after shows when this record came out to be like, those songs really helped me through my divorce. And that's just a crazy thing to think about when we were writing those songs when we were 19, 20, and 21.
Yeah, you're 20 and this guy says this to you, and you're like, "Well, geez,
Yeah.
mister, thanks a lot."
Yeah, it doesn't really register, especially when you're writing it
Yeah.
for you, Jord, that it
That's
would have
insane.
really meant anything
Yeah.
to anyone besides maybe the people you were writing about.
Sure.
Like,
Yeah, that was the first thing about those songs was like them not really being my own, but being other people's. But the point that I was going to make was like what you just said, Corey. It's like, and expand. I don't know. It's easy to look back on it now as older people and nitpick and complain about things we would have done differently, and to make jokes about like gang vocals and saying "darling" super dramatically, but like. It is cool to remember those times that you could see that even now it still speaks to people, and to like go over what it means most importantly in reference to all of us, like as a piece of history and as like a thing that brings back so many fond memories.
yeah, absolutely. I think you nailed it. It's a good spot to end, I think.
That was fun. Thanks, Corey.
yeah, no problem. Yeah, this was a really fun conversation to have.